Welcome to the Final Frontiers radio show, where we spotlight inspiring missionary endeavors around the globe. Stay tuned to hear how you can personally get involved helping the Lord's frontline soldiers effectively advance the gospel where it has never been preached before. In this episode, we'll talk to Pastor Matt Stahlman about his Reach Beyond Borders Extreme Missions Boot Camp that trains missionaries. We also have a unique conversation with true tales of God's miracles in jungle missions. Hello, this is Joshua Martin, and I'm here today with Pastor Matt Stahlman. We're going to talk about the Reach Beyond Borders Boot Camp, the Extreme Missions Boot Camp today. This is something I've been involved in for several years, and Brother Matt, I want you to just introduce that. Where did that all start for you?
Well, in 2001, my wife and I were missionaries in Malawi, Africa. God began to move right away. People began to get saved. 2 churches were established right off. But within 6 months to a year of being on the mission field, we began to encounter all kinds of difficulties, and we had a lot of security problems arise. We had a lot of medical problems, difficulties with malaria, just stuff culturally that we did not expect. Late in that year, we actually returned home from the mission field with just the concept that we was going to take a break, regroup our children. We had 2 little children. They were both very sick with malaria. And so we sat down with our pastor. We began to pray about what we were going to do to kind of refocus and get back to Africa. And like a lot of missionaries, just through the next few months, really began to see that we just weren't ready. But in 2006, we met Brother Gillanger, and he was really talking about a concept of preparing people. And one of the things I remember is coming back on the airplane, I was thinking the same thoughts of, why didn't somebody tell us about some of these things we were going to go through? So Brother Gill started encouraging us in that direction to tell other young people about what was going on in the mission field. And by 2007, we actually had hosted our first camp and ran it successfully in the summer of 2007. 2008, Lieutenant Colonel Brother Sam Martin, he came in and helped us bring structure. We started filling slots with really good instructors, really good material.
So this has been going on for about 10 years then. There's a lot of spiritual enlightenment that comes in some of those times where you just come to the end of yourself and out of weakness are made strong. And I've seen that a lot too firsthand.
That was actually unexpected for us, because not that we were being carnal about it, but we were concentrating on the physical aspects of missions, because there's a lot of ministries and of course local churches. People should be preparing spiritually. They should have good doctrinal understanding. They should be spiritual minded people. So we were going to just really deal with physical elements, but the way I describe it is the first week of camp is adrenaline. It's fun. It's hard. It's exciting. There's challenges going on. The second week really becomes, I guess, it's almost discouraging, monotonous. It's very slow pace, a lot of classroom, a lot of hard living circumstances. And we see people really kind of nosedive spiritually and physically. But then when you come to the third week of camp, really separates people, because some people are able to find I would say almost like a spiritual strength, just a supernatural strength. And I think about Isaiah 40 all the time when I think about that, that he giveth power to the faint. And that is something that we've begun to teach, is to endure when you don't feel like you can take another step. And that spiritual, almost really a spirit of revival, seems to kind of sweep through the place on the third week. Again, when we started doing this, I started doing some research on what made good missionaries. One of the things I found is the military makes good missionaries. A lot of the men that are turning the world upside down today are military men. Another thing is just there's a experience, a toughness about some men and some ladies that make them good missionaries. I was reading Jim Elliot, his life story, and I think if I got the story right, if I remember correctly, he was 12 years old when he would come home from school on a Friday, and he would take a .22 rifle. He would jump on a train going out of town, and he would find another train returning on Sunday so he could get back to school. Alone in the woods with a rifle, a fishing pole, for days at a time. And it's no wonder that God could use men like that to go in and reach the Alca Indians. We have to be honest with ourselves that today our young men are not like that. Although they might be good-hearted young men and young ladies, but they do not have the strength, the tenacity, the character to stare down the jungles or to look at an Islamic world outside of here, a Hindu world, places that are very difficult. We're just not ready for that. And so the camp becomes, you could say, a crucible, a place where that you're able to go through the fire and experience some of those things, but yet in an environment that is safe. There are some restraints, that we put in place to keep people safe. Sure. But when you get in the middle of it, it feels it feels like you're going to die there sometimes.
It really does. And they think, if I survived this night right here, when they get on the field, they will look back on that particular night and they'll say, I got through that night. I can do this. I've seen that over and over. And it is that military that hardens, that military atmosphere that hardens. You and I, when we were kids, we were in the woods all the time, and I don't see that in the generation now.
No, one of our goals is to make sure that someone comes to camp, they have the hardest night of their life.
Yeah.
To build that experience, now we plan those nights for our campers. We make sure that when they walk away, they've experienced a very difficult night or maybe a series of nights, and they do draw strength from that in the future.
I love seeing it because it thrusts them into third world conditions. So they're out there cooking their own food, they start their own fire, or they don't eat. They're learning all of this, and then they're thrust into it, building their own shelters sometimes, and learning the medical skills. There is classroom, but there's a lot of hands-on constantly all day long. And then in the end, the last period, we're actually taking everything they've learned and taking them into real-life scenarios that are amazing. And it's exciting, too, because we're actually sculpting each missions camp to say, hey, this one here is happening in jungle. This next one here is going to be in Muslim territory. And so we'll have days of scenarios where you're hardly sleeping and you're actually experiencing what it'd be like to be in a terrorist zone and still loving people and still ministering to people with Christianity. It's really interesting. Can you tell us basically now where it's at, what we're giving them?
When we start off camp right now, we start with what we call like an introduction or an orientation. So we spend a couple days in and out of the classroom. We deal with some of the basic survival skills. We make sure everybody knows how to handle knives. We work really simple from the ground up because a lot of people do not have that experience. And then we go from there into security. Security in third world countries is very different than here. Although I honestly believe we should be a lot more focused on security here. Even if you live in the United States, sometimes we have blinders on. We don't understand what's going on around us.
That's true.
So we really deal with security in about a 3-day session. And a lot of that is switching from the classroom to the hands-on into scenarios. We deal some with basic self-defense, but really, I believe we put together last year a security training session that rivals anything that you can get in the States. And there were missionaries here from 2 or 3 different organizations last year. I believe that our security lessons rival anything that they've ever received. So God has really been good to give us that. Again, we have security instructors, we have police officers, we have one of the man who's worked with the FBI SWAT teams, we have again, Brother Sam, Lieutenant Colonel. So these guys have put together a system for us that works. The second thing we really focus on is medical. In the third world, I remember in Africa, just the thought going through my mind, what do you do?
Yeah.
You see a car accident on the side of the road. You see, I remember a train in Africa had run into a minibus. And, I have those pictures in my head. The first day in Malawi, we watched a man get killed in a car accident. And those pictures are still in my head, and those thoughts still, what would you do? And I'm thinking about my wife and my 2 children in a car accident or in some kind of a robbery gone wrong, something where someone is laying on the ground bleeding. And the truth is, I had no idea what to do. So we start from the ground up building a medical response.
Right.
Everything from prevention all the way up to treating traumatic injuries and life-sustaining skills. Our medic is really world-renowned. He's an incredible guy. He's written books on the subject. He's been deployed all over the world doing medical rescue. He has a spirit that's tremendous. He's just full of passion and love for the medical field and for the Lord Jesus.
He's a great guy.
He's a great
We went and
guy.
did his training together. Hardly slept for 3 days and went through all that.
He is hardcore. And he's used to it. He's so perfect for what he does. But he's used to training military guys. He'll go from a SEAL training class right into missionary training, and it's sometimes hard for him to adjust, from military mindset. But if you think about it, it really is very similar because we're both behind enemy lines. We're both working in hostile places. We're working in places where there's no ambulances, there's no 911, there's probably no police response. And so we are training in the same way. And what he is training at our camp is called the TCCC, which is Tactical Casualty Combat Care. And so if you're military guys, you're familiar with the TCCC. We're running a 3-day, almost 4-day course now. I've been through it 3 times now, and every time I learn so much, and it just gives me skills, the confidence. Since I went through the class the first time, I've seen a few car accidents. I've seen a few things that have gone wrong, and it's amazing how there's an instinct inside of me now.
Yes, right.
I can walk up, I can approach the car, and I know immediately what I'm going to do, the steps I'm going to take to help that person. I really do believe, as far as a short-term medical training, there's going to be nothing better. There's nothing to compete with what we have. Another thing that's going on is just the cultural. Josh mentioned we tailor our camps. So this year we're really tailoring the camp to India, which means we'll set the diet up with a lot of rice and curry.
Yeah.
We'll set up some of the language challenges that we'll have set up with some of the Indian dialects. So we'll have a really interesting camp this year, but we have done in the years past, we have done the Muslim world. We brought in a missionary from the Middle East and helped us through that. We have done South America. We have done Africa. And so each year we tailor these camps to specific cultures, because I think understanding the culture is one of the really important keys to longevity on the mission field, is being able to adjust.
Very true.
This year we'll be running 2 camps. And so this is the first summer we've ever ran 2 camps, but we have enough interest now that we felt like it was necessary. So the end of June this year, we'll be running a 7-day camp. And this 7-day camp is it's going to be fast-paced. It's going to be specifically geared to medical and security. It's going to be put on more for our missionaries on deputation, missionaries on furlough that are coming back, or maybe someone who is older and mature and ready to go to the mission field. So it's going to be really geared for them. Our college students and our older high school students, we're still planning our 3-week camp. It will be the end of July, 1st of August. And so it's 3 weeks. That gives them time to get wore down. It gives that second week, that monotonous, slow week. And then it allows them to have that really, what I say, a spiritual revival, an experience in that 3rd week to be able to find strength to complete those tasks.
We even have a national director for Final Frontiers in India who keeps saying, I want to come to this next camp. I told him, hey, this one's about India. We'd love to have you there if you want to come and observe and see what's going on. And he wants to be a part of it.
Yeah, we definitely need that because we try to make it as lifelike as possible. Mm-hmm. We study the culture. We try to bring that to life. We try to make these scenarios feel as lively as possible. Last year, we had a few scenarios that were just incredible. It was so much fun, and we learned so much. If people come to learn, they can walk away really enriched and a lot better prepared for the mission field.
If people want to get a hold of us, if they want to get a hold of you and say, we want to come to camp, if there's college students out there, teenagers or adults or missionaries that say we need more training, how can they get in touch with you about this?
If you want to go to the website, it's reachingbeyondborders.org. And really, that's the best way. There'll be a contact page, and you can contact us through there. My phone number's on there. But if you hit the website, it will give you kind of a rundown of those basic schedules of those 2 camps and then what to expect. So it's just reachingbeyondborders.org.
And I can also put a link to let you see a video about this that was just kind of a short commercial that showed one of the camps one year. That's something we can put on there for you as well. Brother Matt, it's been good talking to you today.
All right, man. Appreciate you having us in here, and look forward to camp.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it this year. I hope we get a lot of interest through this.
Is your church excited about missions? Do your people want to learn more about what's going on around the world in these last days? Does your youth department want to hear fresh stories about inspiring American and national missionary work? Or find out how your church can get involved in smuggling Bibles or reaching unreached people groups? For a Final Frontiers representative to come and speak in your church services or missions conference, whether in person or by video link, please contact us at finalfrontiers.world.
Hi, this is Michael Horn, and I'm here with Josh Martin, and he's going to fill us in on some of the miracles that have happened during his explorations through the jungle and missionary life around the world. So I'll give it over to you, and you can let us know some of these miraculous events.
Well, some of these things are fun to tell, and I like to tell them when I'm going into churches and places because it gives people inspiration to realize if I go to the mission field, I don't have to be terrified. I mean, it's amazing when I go over there how I'm protected. And I wanted to give some examples of that. Even some of them are just simple. Like when I was in Ukraine, I had a job to do, for so many days. And I prayed, God, please keep me healthy. And you're in that country, and everyone at the church was getting sick. The hosts that I had there were all sick at the house. And I thought, I've eaten with you, I've been with you, but God kept me healthy. So sometimes it's simple like that. Sometimes it's like when I was in Azerbaijan, in a Muslim country, and we had these conferences that we were doing. Myself and another guy that was there got very sick with lung infections. I can remember waking up just being so weak. I felt like my body's melting, and I had to get up and teach. And I thought, how can I do this? And yet God helps me.
Yes.
And then I had to travel clear to the west And God had somebody set up over there who gave me a special kind of tea from the mountain herbs and
Right.
everything.
Now, what kind of distance and travel is this? I mean, I'm assuming it's not like the interstate here.
No, but it'd be like a day of travel or
Right.
more to cross country over there, and then travel clear up into the Russian mountains on the border there
Right.
and everything. So it was freezing cold, and I had to be out in the cold walking.
Right.
And I've got this infection, and so God protected me through things like that.
Say, awesome.
The funnest ones to tell, though, are the ones when you are out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
Absolutely no one is there to help you. And you're out in the jungle, and I can testify there were 6 years that Jason Dover and I were going after tribes. I remember the very first time we were out there, and who knows what we ate, who knows what they gave us. Dysentery, something hit him hard,
Right.
and he woke me up in the middle of the night, and I reached over there, and I just laid my hand on him, and I just prayed. I just asked God to help him.
Right.
And he said as soon as that happened, he could feel something change in his stomach,
Wow.
and he never had to leave the tent that night. Never had to leave, and he was fine in the morning.
That's
so
awesome.
sometimes God just
Yes.
takes it away. That wasn't even a dense jungle trip. You know, we were actually in a village in a hut.
Right.
But I can tell you another time where there was dysentery troubles and there was bleeding in the stool and everything,
Ooh.
and there was no one there. We were up in these rapids going in this leaky canoe.
Right.
And there was no one there to help us. And we prayed, we stopped, we prayed about it, and God healed it.
That's awesome. That just kind of gives you incentive to go on and let you know God's there. He's with you.
And when no one sees you and you're in the middle of nowhere in a jungle somewhere, he knows where you're at. And that's when I often see the miracles.
Right.
I can remember one time before I left on a jungle trip, I had twisted my ankle working on a church. And I came down and my ankle twisted it. And it was sore for several months. And I was having to wear an ankle brace. I was using herbs and all kinds of
Right.
things on it. And as soon as I got to the jungle, I never had to use the ankle brace once. And I was out there in just trudging through mud, trudging across mountainsides and all kinds of places, and I never had to put the brace on again. It was
Right.
like he just healed it. It was done.
Awesome.
Another time like that, I had an incredible back injury hit me right before a trip. It's like Satan would try to throw something in right before a trip.
Right.
I see that now.
You
know,
don't want to
it's
go.
like,
You want to stay.
yeah,
You're hurting.
I'm
Don't
gonna
leave.
Stop you from this missions trip. And I remember that was the worst time I'd ever had with a back trouble. I had hurt
Right.
myself, injured myself working on a Christian film
Right.
in the woods. And I hurt myself so bad, I managed to get out of that valley, get out of there. But that night, it took me 10 minutes to even get up off the floor. I was flat, and I could not even get up from where I was laying. I had that problem, and then I had an infection in my foot that had swollen my foot up. Terrible. And as soon as I got to Lima, my foot infection went from red to white,
Right.
and the infection had disappeared, and my back, I had no problems. I was able to
great.
hike in the jungle. I think one of the worst times was in jungle territory looking for a tribe, and he had literally broken his ankle.
Oh.
He had hit it under the water, snapped it on this boulder.
Right.
He felt it crack. And he couldn't even eat that night. We hardly had any food anyway.
Right.
We had caught some stingray and we were trying to cook those. And it was such intense screaming pain that he lost his appetite. And so here he is that night praying, and God eased it enough to where he said he finally fell asleep. He didn't feel the
Right.
pain. Sometime in the middle of the night when he woke up and then got up the next day, he realized there's no pain here. And
Oh,
the
wow.
swelling had gone down. Literally, the thing was swollen. He
Right.
had felt it. And he knows what it's like to break a bone. But the swelling had gone down. And he gets up in the morning, and he puts his backpack on, and we keep hiking. I mean, how in the
That's
world?
miraculous right there.
Yeah. He
Right.
tells that story, and I was there. I mean, we prayed for him, and we thought, does the trip stop here?
Yes.
What do we have to do? Build a litter, and do I have to try to drag him out of here? And so when you see those things, it builds your faith. I mean, we've been bit by things, poisonous caterpillars
Right.
and stuff. You look down and you think, well, what's going to happen? Or
There's my arm here.
I've literally seen on this right shoulder right here, I've seen the poison sac coming out from a hornet, some kind of
Ooh.
weird hornet creature.
Right.
I don't know what it was. It didn't look like a hornet, but it was something with wings, and it stung me. Felt like I'd been shot by a .22
Oh, wow.
or something. Just exploded, and I see the white poison sac coming down my skin.
Oh.
And
no.
I was trying to get us to a certain creek so we could find our way out. And once I got there, I said, "Brother, you need to look at this. Pray over me." And I was okay. It didn't go to my heart,
Right.
Now,
when you're out in the jungle, just kind of describe the environment a bit, just to help paint a picture for the listeners.
Yeah, you're trudging through rivers and creeks, and you're sinking in mud up to your knees sometimes, or you're on a raft, and you're in and out of the water all the time. And then when you're not on the creeks, if that's not your road, then you're chopping all day. and that's why you're running into all kinds of ants and insects and terrible situations. That's very, very dense, very hard to get through. The land can be incredible, and then when it rains, I mean, it floods the river you're in, and you can't keep things dry, you don't have any sun to dry it out, or you can't start a fire. It's a very difficult situation, so if you get hurt out there, then it's very likely you'll die. And the animals will find you. I mean, I can hear jaguars at night.
Right.
I can hear crocodiles slapping the water. I can hear the jaguars growling. That's the kind of environment that it often is, and you're trying to find people that are not in a village, but they're moving around all the time.
Okay.
And so you're looking for their trails, or you're looking for where they come out, and those are the ones that are hard to find.
Right.
I can tell one more that was real interesting. My father was able to come visit one time, and this was not deep jungle, but this was central jungle nonetheless. Okay. And so you're in the mountains, and nobody really knows where you're at. And I was taking him to a favorite place near where Jason and my sister live, and I always love to run out there and show this waterfall. It's beautiful, and it's into the jungle a ways, and you got to hike. And we got out there, and come to find out, we actually did not have a flashlight.
Oh, no.
This was close to home, so, you know, it was just a quick
you didn't
little...
think about it.
Take some pictures, come back, I'm just going to show him. And somehow we weren't thinking, and we started heading back, and it got dark, and you could see the stars, and I thought, wow... how am I going to find the trail for very long?
Yes.
We finally found a way to take the camera and, flash the camera every once in a while so I could see that. We had a dog with us, and that dog was very protective. If anybody even comes to the house, that dog would just start growling and maybe attack them.
Right.
And we started hearing the dog growl in this jungle trail. And then
something's around.
Yeah. We bumped into him, and we could feel what did you stop for? And then he was behind us growling, and so he let us pass, and we knew he was protecting us from something out there.
I'm not going to use the flash because I don't want to know what's there.
It was dense in that spot, real dense. But this is the amazing thing. We lost the trail, and I broke through the jungle and found the creek. I could hear it. And so we had to go on slippery rocks in the dark, feeling our way through this creek. You couldn't hear anything but rapids water. And I'm leading my dad and trying to show him where I think it's going to be. And if we go too far, we'll miss the trail. And so we're looking down there, and suddenly I look, and I see this light, and it looks like somebody with a headlamp. And we didn't think about it at that moment, but we start dawning on us later, okay?
Right.
What in the world is this? They can't afford headlamps out there.
Yeah.
They can't find headlamps out there. And the natives are shorter than me. And this guy was taller than me.
Okay.
So we're in the dark, we're in the creek looking down, and I see this person, I can see this guy, the dog which hates people,
Yes.
doesn't even notice him. The dog's in the water with us, doesn't even bark, doesn't growl. And I see this guy cross the creek and disappear into the jungle on the other side. Then it dawned on me, that's the trail. That's the trail I was looking for. He walked it. I called out to him. He never answered. And you get up there, and I was like, thank you, Lord. This is the trail. We found the trail. I flashed the camera along the trail again and was able to get us back. And as soon as we got to the edge of the jungle, Jason had come down with the truck headlights, found us, and the camera battery died. So there was no more light from the camera. Can you see how God just...
And then at that point, you're like,
Yeah. And I could tell other stories in my life that's not missionary related where I've seen things where I think God had an angel looking out for me. But I hope something like this just inspires people out there. Don't be terrified to go into countries. I can talk all kinds of stories about how God protected me in places like India, in temples and places, or in Muslim territory. But these are just fun ones to tell where God just, the provision and the miraculous intervention. It's beautiful.
And I think sometimes it shows people that your quiet time is when you may actually see these miracles. When you're busy in regular day-to-day life, it's hard to see them. They're there, but it's a lot harder to see. But when you're on God's path and you take the quiet time and you look around, that's when you see God's miracles are all around us.
It's true. Things are happening all the time that we don't see. And when you're in a dangerous situation, you're serving Him, He protects you.
Yes.
He's watching out for you. When you go where He wants you to go, you're in the safest place. I always tell people I feel safer on that jungle river than I did in the United States. When I was here, I felt safer when I would just get onto that river because it was dangerous, but I knew He was with me because I was where I was supposed to be.
Yep.
I love that feeling.
Knowing that you're where God wants you to be. Well, thank you, and maybe we'll have some more miracles to tell in another episode.
All right.
In protected jungles around the world, there are still over 140 isolated tribes that have remained completely uncontacted. Who will reach them first? Loggers and oil men with their guns, or peaceful ambassadors of Jesus Christ bearing the good news of salvation. These last remaining dark territories on earth are extremely difficult to penetrate. If you're interested in partnering with us to help fund these expeditions, visit us at finalfrontiers.world.
Hello, my name is Mike Sandiford, and it's time for one of our original segments, Following Timothy. Following Timothy takes us around the world to hear the testimonies of our sponsored national trainees. Each of these men are currently being trained by veteran national pastors. What's their calling? To become church planners, to reach their communities, countries, and regions with the gospel of Jesus Christ. If you would like to know more about the Timothy Project, you can visit us at finalfrontiers.world. Today we take you to the small country of Bhutan, a closed country ruled by a Buddhist king. In a village on the southeastern border between India and Bhutan, there is a gate in the wall that surrounds this closed country. Our Timothy is from this region, and in his own words, he writes, "I was born in a Christian family. However, as I grew up, I lived totally according to my own desires, and I knew nothing about salvation as no one had shared the gospel with me. One day, I had a sharp argument with my friends while playing cricket. Returning home with an angry mood, for some reason, I wanted to attend church. As I went to church that day, God spoke through my pastor and by his word. On that day, I received Christ as my Savior, and I had a changed life. Now, by his grace, I am studying his word and serving my Lord who has saved my life. Please keep this Timothy and others like him in your prayers from the country of Bhutan." Every month, we consistently have several Timothy applications coming in. If you would like to know more about the Timothy Project and supporting the Timothy Project, you can visit us at finalfrontiers.world.
Paul discipled young men like Timothy and Titus who journeyed with him and were given hands-on experience in church planting. And today, there are many surrendered Timothys eager to receive training from national preachers and institutes, but lacking the simple finances for curriculum, living needs, and transportation to unreached villages. To make an eternal investment in a young church planter's life, visit finalfrontiers.world.
When I was a young boy, I would hear stories about the Cherokee and Apache nations. I thought the words nation and country were always synonymous, but I was wrong. A country is a geographical, political area with a government, a monetary system, a flag, unique laws, etc. It is a unified territory with established borders. A nation is a unique people group with both a common DNA and culture, which, though similar, stand out distinct from every other people group on the planet. Shortly after World War II, theologians rushed to announce that the Great Commission had finally been fulfilled. They reasoned that Christian soldiers had, by the war's end, visited every nation in the world, leaving a witness behind them. Then, some began to realize that our understanding of the verse was incorrect. The Great Commission does not compel us to evangelize geopolitical regions, but rather ethnic groups. The job was not complete then or now, as worldwide there are at least 6,000 unreached ethnic groups that we know of. The Greek word used in the Great Commission for nation is ethnos, the word from which we get our modern term ethnic groups. The Scots, for example, are an ethnic group, but the wording of the makeup of heaven's choir in Revelation 7:9 would emphasize the evangelizing not only Scotland as a country or the Scots as a race, but each separate clan or family of the Scots. We are to reach even the McAllisters, the McElroys, and the McDonalds. Eventually, the Cherokees of the eastern United States were moved to Oklahoma, but they didn't cease to be Cherokees. The Apaches were moved to Mexico, Oklahoma, and Florida, but they were still Apaches. You can change your country. You can assimilate into a different culture. That's what immigration is all about. But you cannot change your DNA, and that is what the Great Commission is all about. I'm John Nelms. To learn more about missions, order a copy of my book, The Great Omission, on our website at finalfrontiers.world.
Your inquiries and comments are important to us. If you have questions or perhaps subject matter you would like to have addressed on this show, please visit us at finalfrontiers.world.
You've been listening to the Final Frontiers radio show, funded by sponsors like you. Thank you so much for joining us. Through the funding of national and native preachers, we endeavor to effectively advance the gospel where it has never been preached before. If you want more information, visit www.finalfrontiers.world. That's finalfrontiers.world.